Your packet was sitting there, and I felt bad that I moved it.
Pecking order is at your discretion, sir. Yeah, you hear it, will. Work at only people.
Okay, we are recording and live streaming when you are ready, Mr. Chairman.
It looks like we're about 7 seconds away. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Blast off.
There you go.
We'll call the meeting to order of the Isabella County Board of Commissioners Finance and Administration Committee. We have approval of the agenda. Is everybody good with the agenda? Any additions, deletions?
Done for me, sir.
All right, we have an agenda. We'll do a call to the public. I think they're all here for business on hand. We'll move down then to our first item of business, which is consider approving fiscal year 2024 budget amendment number 2024-04, second quarter budget adjustments for the general fund, and authorize the board chair to sign the same. Madam Administrator,
Straightforward.
please.
Yes.
Yeah,
Absolutely, Mr. Chairman. So fairly straightforward on this quarter general fund budget of adjustments. We're actually adding a bit to general fund balance, just under $18,000. So that's the good news there. Where the other funds are coming from, there, some of these net out zero, right? It's an increase in fund balance, it's an increase in expenditures, if you will. I'm sorry, not increase in the fund balance, increase in revenues, increase in expenditures, so it's a walk. Those things are just over 2 million in ARPA dollars. Remember, the board had obligated, if you will, the remaining ARPA dollars towards the HVAC project at the county administration building. In order to do the HVAC project, the ARPA guidelines do say that we can do any project that has to be done in order to do the HVAC once we get going. So of course, the board has obligated those funds to the asbestos abatement and relocation while that abatement is being done in addition to the HVAC. So you'll see an increase of $2,069,885 in revenues and a corresponding increase in expenditures. So that offsets, but understand, elevates your budget, right? We had a $32 million, now we have a $34 million budget.
and these ARPA
Understand
funds are not, they're not the lost revenue. They're the other portion that's coming into play now.
That is a really good point. That is correct. They're the ARPA direct dollars, so they had to be used for specific purposes. We chose the HVAC project.
Okay.
Thank you for pointing that out about the increase in our overall budget dollar amount. I think public residents need to understand that. This isn't just, money that we're always going to have. This is a one-off,
Correct.
just like the tower project and the sheriff's
Exactly, yes.
situation, which is about $4 million. So between the two, we're over $6 million in additional money. It looks like we have this huge budget when we really don't.
Right. Yeah, these serve really to, it inflates revenues and expenditures, but really at the end of the day, it's a wash. Yep, well said.
Thank you.
The next thing is the fiscal 22 Homeland Security Grant. We're always in arrears with that grant. We finally know the grant amount, so we're building that in. Equal amount of revenues and expenditures, so again, a quote unquote wash. Same with, if you remember on the wind turbine farm, we had an escrow account with the developer. Same type of thing we are going to have on in the upcoming, hopefully, solar project. So we're building in $15,400 on revenue side and expenditure side for special use permit and site plan review of the application. So again, that's a wash. Where the difference really comes from is we're transferring in just over 29,000 from two funds that we are closing out. We've had discussions about this in the past, discussions with the auditors recently, and now we know we can do this. So in the next item on the other funds, budget adjustment, you'll see these two funds, Veterans Relief Fund and Veterans Trust Fund. Those are closing out those funds and absorbing the balances back into the general fund. We are allowed to do that, and it doesn't mean that the county's not funding Veterans Relief or Veterans Trust anymore. We're just not doing it in a separate fund. We're accounting for it now in general fund. In the past, we accounted for it in a separate fund. We would appropriate it every year, and if it didn't get used, it would just build up in that fund unused. So until now, we see we're absorbing it back into general fund. So any questions about that transfer in of those dollars? Okay, the one expense you'll see that is increasing and not offset are dues and subscriptions, and the Board of Commissioners is something we missed at budget time. You pay a lot of dues to MAC, to Michigan Association of Counties, Michigan Townships Association, GFOA, those type of things. So this is current year, just building those in. So all of that totaled into the budget about an $18,000 increase to general fund.
And those dues and subscriptions, that'll be incorporated into our 2025 budget, correct?
No,
So we're gonna take those out, aren't we?
correct.
Oh,
The 2025 budget,
that's right.
as the
Get
story
eliminated.
goes right now, is $0 for dues and subscriptions. So please understand, that that's something we'll have to deliberate when it comes to that. But those were removed from every department, including the Board of
Correct.
Commissioners, and you will have to justify those organizations that we think that the commission should continue paying dues to. Certainly, there's value to those,
There is.
but,
We don't have the money, we don't have the money.
correct.
Okay,
Correct.
well, thank you for bringing that
Mhm,
up. Okay.
mhm, great question. Any questions about the general fund budget amendments?
Commissioner Emery, do you have any questions on these changes?
I'll answer you. Thank you. Phil.
All right, then you want to make the motion to move these to?
Move to take consideration of approving the fiscal year 2024 budget amendment number 2024-04, second quarter budget adjustments for general fund to our work session next Tuesday night.
I will support that. Moved and supported. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. It moves forward.
Okay.
The next item, consider approving fiscal year 2024 budget amendment number 2024-05, second quarter budget adjustments for other funds and authorize the board chair to sign the same. So we have our other than general fund.
Yes, so all of these again are netting out, so the increase is equal to the decrease. However, just like general fund, this is increasing the amount of some of these funds, right? The first one, we're looking at our Register of Deeds Automation Fund. There's a project that our Register of Deeds is getting involved with and needs to build into the budget. She is here, I guess, if you want to offer any background on what this is, because I know you're also.
Numerous things, actually. So there are, hello, there are several projects that coming up that we have in the works. The money that I'm moving is to cover just legal going over the contracts. One of the projects is right now we do e-recording, and we e-record documents with numerous third-party submitters like Simplifile, EPN. There are numerous different companies that someone can contract with. They pay a fee, and the fee is based on how many documents they submit. The issue that we're having now that we're in our new digs, we have a few different things. We have title companies that are coming in, and then they're lining up at the counter waiting to get tax certifications from the treasurer's office, and then they have to get the documents recorded with us. Those people were right across the street from us at our old building, and now they're driving to us. They've left their work, so it's not just a walk-in 5-minute visit at our counter, walk to the treasurer, get something certified, and away they go. It also, we have documents that are dropped off by FedEx and UPS at the courts building. And then the courts will notify us that they're there, or sometimes they give them to somebody else that has stopped by and we don't know it until 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And then we can't get those tax certified. The law requires that when we receive them, we have to time date stamp them. And once we do that, the law says that we either record that document or we have to reject that document. So once that is in play, if we can't get the treasurer's office to certify it, if it's 4 o'clock or after, they're not going to be able to certify that document, get that document back to us and have us get it in the system, have us index that document, record that document, index that document, get that document approved, and get everything verified and post everything for the end of the day. So then we have a dilemma, a legal dilemma. So what we're trying to do is to bypass that. Our current software vendor has a new way for us to e-record, which allows us to receive a small amount of money. We would split the revenue with them, and it's a very small amount, but it allows all of the recorders who would like to e-record, and we've already talked to some of the players involved, and they love the idea. They would pay like $1 a document to submit electronically. They're not committed to a whole contract with the large submitters, which require them to have a contract with them, and they have to submit so many documents a month at this rate, or it's a high amount that they have to pay. So it would be a smaller amount. It means they don't have to drive to us. They don't have to stand in line. They don't have to wait. It also will take those, instead of them paying, a lot of times it's 11 something, close to $12 for them to submit the document, send it overnight, either FedEx or UPS. They're sending it to the courthouse. We're not receiving it sometimes till the next day. It allows those people to automatically send that document to us. The other thing is the runners that the title companies and the attorneys are sending to us aren't allowed to make corrections. So if they get there, we've checked the documents over, the document can't be recorded because of a minor problem. They have to take that document back with directions from us as to what the problem is. Sometimes they get back there because it might be a high school kid, it might be someone who's first year of college, whatever it is, they're a runner, they don't really know terminology or anything. They get back there, they're trying to explain it, no matter how detailed a note we give them. Sometimes that attorney's office has to call back and ask, well, exactly what is the problem with the document? And so then we're explaining it, takes double time. If they send it as an e-recording, we look at the document, we can send it back. We also, our system will retain a copy of that document. So if they call back and they do have a question, any of us can pull that up and we can see automatically, oh, this is why we send it back. We send it back and we have a note that says why we send it back. We can see the document. We can tell them, oh, on line 3, this is what the problem was. They can take care of that problem right then. They can pop it right back to us and it's recorded. It's not a problem, you know, it solves things quickly. They're able to get the documents recorded right away. We eliminate a lot of these problems. Doesn't make a lot of money, but it resolves a lot of congestion. It's also a lot easier for the treasurer's office. Instead of constant interruption, whenever someone comes, they can let those be in their queue and then record, you know, tax certify those as they come. That's one piece. We have another piece. I was approached by a gentleman from Stanford University, or law school. They are working on a project. It's an AI project. They have done this at Santa Clara County. They developed an AI tool that will read the old script. There aren't any tools right now that will do that. if you run something through OCR, it will read a typewritten document. It will not read the old script. So there's kind of a problem with that. The reason that they're developed this tool is they're trying to read or find restrictive covenants in documents. And so they are interested in our records because we have everything all the way back online. And the rest of the state of Michigan does not have that. They've already identified, because we have the records out there, they can go and look at those anyway. They've already identified that in the very beginning, Isabella County started discriminating against Polish and German immigrants. That was our first.
Oh,
And so they've already identified that. There is a law on Michigan books right now that allows for someone to file a discharge against a restrictive covenant. And so this opens up a way of identifying what those restrictive covenants are. This group from Stanford Law, group of fellowship students, they are looking to take this a little bit further. Their study really is what they, in talking to them, because obviously I don't leave things, they had to have an end game. And so my question was, hey, what is your end game? Because you're not just doing this out of the goodness of your heart, you got to have an end game. So basically their end game is, what they're trying to do is to find out, how does all of these discriminating covenants, how did they affect the way that, starting in Isabella County, because we are the middle of Michigan, we do have several groups. We did start discriminating early. Let's just get that right out there. We do have numerous different groups in the area that we know. Obviously, we have Native Americans, we've discriminated, there's been discrimination against them. We know that we have different groups. They're trying to figure out exactly how did this shape Isabella County, and then further outreaching, how did it shape the way that Michigan is today? And then, of course, take it probably throughout the country, but how did this have an effect? Because we know today that there are areas in Detroit that have never changed. There are areas in Detroit that started out as Black only, and they're still Black only. And so
ethnic centers. in Detroit.
we know that's not the case here as far as Black only, but that doesn't mean we're not discriminative here in other cases. And so that's a project that they're trying to do. The projects will not cost us money. There isn't a fee for them to do this. The only fee is on our end is for an attorney to look over the memorandums of understanding, because we need to do that to protect us with them. And then, of course, we have to have a memorandum of understanding in order to have to do electronic recording with GovOS.
So the project really starts with taking a look at the script and understanding what it's saying. It's not clear sometimes in the documents,
So
documents, or
the AI tool allows them, it's essentially they're training the AI tool with the OCR to be able to read that script and to be able to interpret it. They've already found some things in our documents, but what they want to do is they need a large group of those documents in order to be able to develop this AI tool to where it's completely reliable. Because obviously, the more you use something, like that, the more reliable that it is.
Okay.
Yeah, and so when they did the project in Santa Clara, California, most of their documents, were typed. So they had gone, when the documents came in, even way back, they went and typed those into books and typed the documents up. Whereas in Isabella County, we always went back and hand wrote the documents into a book. So we transcribed documents, whereas they went back and typed them in. And so they weren't able to use that tool or develop that tool the way that they wanted to.
So they need script and need a lot of it.
They need script, they need a lot of it, and we're the ones that have it. So that's
have the
why.
Kudos
Interesting,
for
fascinating. Interested to see how this all plays
being
out,
ready for it.
and what they find, what their findings are.
So-
And it doesn't cost us other than just
Legal.
legal to look at it, memorandum of understanding. I'm choosing to use technology funds for both of them, even though one could go under, the one with our software vendor could go under, general fund. I just believe that at this point in time, for public perception, I think we have one project we're doing one way. I think if we put both projects under the tech, it's, better for the county's, public perception right now.
Okay,
And it is a legitimate use of that fund. I would not put it under there if it was not.
so are we the only site in Michigan
They're
to
using-
be reviewed? Or
We are the only one. They did offer a limited one to Hillsdale County because they have the Vanguard search, which is what we have. They have a limited amount of records on there. Hillsdale County did decline. The registered there is retiring at the end of this year and not interested in getting involved in anything like that.
Okay.
And you guys know I'm always up for anything.
Thank you for the explanation. I
Pretty
know
cool.
I would not have done that justice.
It perked my interest. I'm just
gonna
wondering
say-
when I'm gonna get a check for the discrimination I
Wait,
had for my
wait,
property.
Okay, you're looking for restitution, aren't you?
Restitution, yeah.
Please open it.
I'm not gonna hold
No,
my breath.
no, I think it's like a lot of things that, somebody at some point, hey, all those people are gone, but at some point, somebody could say, put out a sincere apology
That's the other thing.
and we move
Did you-
forward, but I think it's something that happened. It happened in almost every sector. And I think projects like this are important because we, as Mr. Pickens likes to point out a lot, we have to learn from our mistakes. And if we don't learn from our mistakes, and this is a good way of seeing not only learning from our mistakes, but seeing what consequences those mistakes have had over the centuries.
Interesting.
Fascinating.
So-
man.
Some great stuff going on.
Well, thank you, Karen.
Thank you.
All for the low price of $5,000.
Well, fortunately,
We're live.
Right,
We're
relax, yes, yes.
Okay.
And found monies to cover those outside of general fund. So the good news
Thank you.
continues. Thank you, Karen. On the other funds, you'll see an amount of $418,520 being moved into, if you will, our Saginaw Chippewa Indian Tribe 2% fund. So this means that we've had the monies there. Now we're building them into the budget because down below, you'll see 4 programs that are starting to use those funds. These are from past awards of tribal 2%. We've been awarded the dollars. Now we're spending it. Sheriff, emergency management, and a little bit at the landfill must be for testing.
So all the things indicated with the tribal
That
Notation.
280 fund. Yep.
280 fund.
Yep. You got it. And so all those projects total the 418,000 that it's being increased by. So again, that tribal fund is increasing, right? It's the revenues are increasing, the expenditures are increasing so that we've got a budget to spend those dollars that have been awarded.
Okay.
Everything else is also netting out zero. Commission on Aging is using, just under $6,000 of fund balance. I believe that is for extra on the pavilion project. Is
No,
that
they
what that is,
they
or-
received a grant in last year's budget,
Didn't spend it.
and didn't
next
spend it
year.
all. I don't know, specifically what grant it was, but they received, dollars in last year's budget, didn't spend it. And, contrary to, I think, what a lot of people think, they said, we didn't spend it, we have it this year. It's in their fund balance, but there's no budget for it, so we're now
Gotta put
bringing
it in
that
the budget.
budget back into the current year. So when they spend that out of that line item,
You got a someplace
it's
to
not
draw
a
from.
zero budget and $6,000 of expenditure. So that was, Jen Crawford had brought that forward to put forth in her current budget. And it seems so small compared to giant budget, but especially with grant expenditures and things with grants in the states or anything, we want to make sure everything is
Gets
tied.
used up.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's amazing that to get the grant, that whoever provided it doesn't want accountability to know that it was spent. That it was
So-
delayed this long.
Yeah, and maybe that's
Well,
part
I'm
of
sure
what
that-
bubbled it
yeah.
up for her to be able to budget for it, to spend it.
I guess some grants can go over into multiple years though. So let's say she spent of the $8,000 grant, she spent 2 in fiscal year 23. She probably maybe had to do some reporting of what she had spent so far.
Mhm.
So now we're spending more in 24 and she'll probably have to go back and do that same type of reporting. There's
She can
very
account
few
for it.
grants that I think where you spend the money and not report it
Yeah. you gotta-
in some shape or form. Kind of going back to like the
Yeah.
2%.
Yeah.
I'm actually glad that,
think it's
that was one of our questions from our auditors. They said, well, here's the monies that are still left on the books for maybe some projects or we didn't use the full 20,000 and there's a couple thousand left or so. How does that, they asked, how does that get reported or what does the tribe do? How does that go back to them? It's a good question. It doesn't, it hasn't, but now I think with this reporting tool, that they're coming out with, I'm hoping too that it allows or has the option to, if there is 5,000 or so left in a grant, to request that for a very similar project or something different. And if they say yes or no or whatnot, instead of, just kind of letting it sit there. I think with our recycling, director, he had some leftover, from years back. And he either met or reached out, wrote to tribal council to ask if those monies, he did not just spend them on whatever, even though it was all, recycling or maybe
Mhm.
another repair of a baler that went down, he reached out to get those, I guess, reallocated for different
Mhm.
use. And, they got their blessing, but I'm hoping this reporting tool almost helps with that as well. Keeps track of it and then see what's left and follow up for what's left.
And on the flip side of that, talking with Eric Rodriguez, second on Chippewa Indian Tribe,
Mhm.
does 2 other things. One, it creates a situation where people are asking for a specific dollar amount and they have to delineate exactly what they're gonna spend it on. And then it shows to them that it's actually being spent on exactly what they asked for.
Absolutely, yeah.
And I think that's important for the tribe also too. Again, without this tool, you can ask for 60,000 for a $40,000 project and have
What do
no
you do?
accountability for
The
the other
rest.
20.
Yes.
That frees up that frees up that 20 now to go to other projects. And that's what we were talking about. We can, through this tool, they're gonna be able to do more projects because the existing projects that are coming forth and they approve have to fall within the budget or be close to the budget. And if they're not, then you have to explain what you're gonna do with it. So
Exactly, yep.
it's a win-win.
I'm looking
for the
forward
tribe and
to
for
it.
us. Yep.
Of course, we don't know what that reporting looks like yet.
So maybe I'm not.
Right, we don't know. The last two funds on here are the Veterans Relief and the Veterans Trust. Again, just over 29,000 for Veterans Relief and $150 for Veterans Trust. And those are being closed out. So on this budget amendment, you see a decrease in their fund balance and an increase in their expenditures, the same amount, so that we can transfer those monies out of those funds. And your last budget amendment showed it coming into general fund.
Yep. This is the process, how it works.
Yes.
Okay, I understand. that.
Yeah, a good way to see that. Any questions for us about budget amendments? There will be more next quarter, I'm sure.
Mhm. All right.
I will move to consider the fiscal year 2024 budget amendment number 2024-05, which is the second quarter budget amendment for other funds to, move it to consideration at the work session next week.
Support.
It's been moved and supported. Are there any further comments or discussion on this? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. It moves forward.
Okay.
Well, our next one is fiscal year 2023 draft budget discussion. Audit, oh, wait. Draft audit discussion. Never mind.
No, not the budget yet.
You
Gotta get the
No, we
audit
gotta
done
get the
first.
audit first.
know what's on the mind.
We got budget on the brain.
Oh, goodness, where, so much paper. Do you want this? Good read.
We're gonna let you take this one right from the get-go.
Mhm.
Okay,
We,
so what you have, the big document is the audit, right? And
okay.
in about 2-3 pages is the transmittal letter. From me to Jeremy. The big news, everybody always wants to know, if you flip ahead to page 38. And this is gonna be revenues, expenditures, changes in fund balance.
Mhm.
What did we do? If you're looking at page 38. Left-hand column is general fund. And you'll see at the bottom, we started the fund balance, started the year with a fund balance of just over 12 million, 12,352. We actually added just over $8 million to fund balance to end the year at just over 20 million, almost 20,500,000. General fund balance.
2023.
Now, I know you will say,
Well, it looks like we're doing so good.
it
Doesn't
looks
it
like
though?
we're doing so
You think-
good,
For
doesn't
one
it?
year
I'm
it
looking at,
does.
well,
For 1 year.
$32
yeah.
million in revenues, and I'm thinking, well, we got a fund balance over 20 million.
And understand where that
No.
all came from in the current year, right, was recognizing those lost revenues of ARPA dollars. Right? And that was closer to 9 million that we used in ARPA towards
Yes.
that we recognize, so understand.
Mhm.
Budget, you go another page forward and it shows, on page 41, you'll see the difference between actual and budget. Right, so, if you're on 41, original budget is that first column. We had originally budgeted to use 473,000 in fund balance, but ended up adding that
8 million.
8,133,000, all because of ARPA. So without ARPA, it would have about 9 million that we recognize, so you can do the math. We would have used fund balance in a greater amount than we budgeted. If we're recognizing ARPA.
Correct.
So, to your point, if we move forward to page 103, this is, so what, right? So what, we have $20 million, almost $20.5 million fund balance. Where does all that go? So page 103, in that first column is general fund. And down at the bottom, well, at the top, you'll see non-spendable fund balance, right? We've got advance to component unit, 350,000. That's the amount you've advanced to the drains for their operating,
Which includes the 250,000 in loan.
recent one, yes, but in total, 350. Is that? yes?
That's all of them. yes.
That's all of them. Inventories. Those are, obviously not spendable. It's in the form of product. Prepaids are things that we've paid for in advance, right? So those are non-spendable dollars, make up just over $500,000 of our fund balance. We have no restricted dollars. You'll see in that in the restricted category, that's outside entities putting restrictions on our general fund. We don't have that. Committed, we do have almost $3.5 million of committed funds. Committed is by board action, takes board action to commit, it takes board action to uncommit fund balance. And this board has now on the books committed almost $3.5 million towards the correctional facility project. That's for our 12%, right? That $41.5 million USDA loan gets us 88% through the project. 12% is on us. Every time we pay the bill, USDA pays 88%. We pay 12. That's what that $3.5 million is for. Then you see assigned fund balance. There's a whole lot of things that go into this. We've assigned 1.551 million for the sheriff's office and correctional facility bond payment that we know we'll need to make. Yes, we budget for that, but we need to assign fund balance so that it doesn't get spent on anything else, right? It's always reserved for that. Working capital, we assigned $2 million towards that and always hope that that's enough to get us by. My understanding is, that's the cash on hand to help us operate. It's getting to be not enough, certainly.
No, not as much as we're into now.
Vested benefits, almost 1.2 million. And that is an amount for compensated absences. So everyone, I shouldn't say everyone, but
General
most
fund.
employees,
Yep.
yep, and this is just general fund, thank you very much, have accrued and unused time on the books, right? And per
Oh.
policy, we
Yeah.
pay that out. Now,
Yeah.
state law says if you term with us, retire, separate, or whatever, and I don't want to cause a rebel, but state law, you don't have to pay employees who separate any accrued and unused time. But because our policy says we will, or our collective bargaining agreement say that we will to a certain degree,
Yeah.
right? When a non-union, non-represented employee resigns terms, whatever, they're paid up to 225 hours of their PTO. If they have 226 hours, they lose an hour.
Okay.
But they're paid out per policy. So this amount is per policy. If we closed our doors, which won't happen, and everyone
We're
left,
accounting for.
what would we owe everyone on their way out the door? We've got to
Okay.
assign an amount for that in case everyone decides to leave us on the same day.
Because I'm very familiar with losing that benefit of PTO dollars, if you will, that you accrued. I'm used to when if you leave, you lose it.
So our policy is different. Our
Yeah,
policy
that's
says, and
that's
so
That's a benefit that
absolutely.
should be included in with our compensation as well. I would think it should be part of the compensation.
A total
package and-
compensation, yes.
Right.
Agreed, agreed.
That's a definite.
Real dollars.
Real dollars, okay.
The district health capital and the central dispatch capital are based on our rental agreements on those facilities. We set aside a certain amount based on last year's expenditures or something. Claims liability is almost 300,000. That comes is an amount that we book from MMRMA, our liability and property insurance carrier. We've got a few cases on the books right now, a few claims that they suggest an amount that we may need to incur in the future. So we have to assign some fund balance towards that. Court technology, just over 18,000, about $18,500. We assign fund balance for that because they have, and correct me if I go off on this one, Melissa, they have a portion of dollars off of some charges that they get to maintain specifically for court technology, and it goes into an assigned line item, and that is this amount.
Okay.
Subsequent year expenditures, this one really got us. And I think next week when Raymond is here, maybe they can explain it better. Maybe you can help explain it to him now, Melissa. I know it's an audit rule, but I don't know. It's subsequent year expenditures. So subsequent to the year being audited,
Fiscal year
Over-
2024,
over a
and
certain time period, we had expended, is it over like the first
no,
30
that
days,
is-
60 days or anything, or is it?
That 5.2 million of subsequent year expenditures is what is it in our budget document? That's use of fund balance. If you remember the budget you adopted in September of 2023 for 2024, the auditors always require, so it makes sense that they're assigning it, because they're saying, well,
You budgeted
you're
to
saying
use
you budgeted $5.2 million.
Right.
You gotta put it in, you're gonna use,
Yeah.
you have to, and it's just how the statements and how.
It's use of fund balance, it's
Yep,
budgeted
Yeah.
use
Yep,
of
that
fund
comes right,
balance for the
that's right
next
from
year.
and it's,
Perfect.
so last year, that was the 474,000 that we thought we were, or that we initially budgeted to use for fiscal year 23 that you've seen in here. That was on last year's 22 audit to say for 23,
Right,
that's
we've already committed.
474,000. So it's
Okay.
always the next year's expenditures from your budget
Okay,
If
that you
we,
adopted.
if we amend the budget, so like we just did, right, we amended the general fund and we added about 18,000 to a fund balance through that general fund budget amendment, or we will once the board approves it. Does that mean then, once the board approves that budget amendment, we can go in and take that 18,000 off of that amount? Or once we assign it here, it's.
So with that
what it is for
amount,
the year?
I do not believe so. I will ask the
Mm.
auditors. Something that I remember Treasurer Pickens brought up throughout the year. Do you remember last year, we had the bond anticipation note at fiscal year 2022? We had put assigned. Well, then 2023 starts to happen. We paid off that note. On our end, we can make an adjustment to say, we've paid that, that's no longer assigned.
But not in
But-
the audit.
But not,
document.
we can't go
Sorry.
back and change,
Sure.
not the audit
Okay.
document. So it almost adjusting that amount, like the bond anticipation note, adjusting that on our books will eventually fall to the unassigned fund balance. We have all these assigned, and if you clear that, now you have more in your assigned, maybe, because you've paid it back. But with the subsequent year expenditures, that's just kind of already in your book, so that's what your budget is, and that budget is changing every single month. Maybe you're using that much, maybe you're not. Well, the 5.2, this amendment probably looks like, well, it's 5.217, so it looks like 5.2 now, because we just added
Right.
17,000. But we don't change it on the audit document. And we don't necessarily change it but it's changed in our current budget with these budget
right,
amendments.
within
But
the,
it's not adjusted on the audit, because that's annually.
Right.
But back to
Snapshot.
Treasurer Pickens' point, those other kind of items, like the bond anticipation note, something that's not our fund balance that we were gonna use for the budget, those can be changed, and I will,
Okay, so that's
yes,
a
yep.
your trial
And we
balance
will
is
be changing
appropriate
those throughout the
Okay.
year.
Sure,
throughout the
but
year.
assigned, there's really only one time of the year you do that, it's at audit time.
That's how we've done it.
Yeah.
We don't have to do it that way. And again, to Treasurer Pickens' point, especially a $2.6 million bond, we can adjust those types of things. The other ones, the 22,000 of district health, well, I need to wait till the end of the year anyway to see what those expenditures are. Working capital, the bond payment for the correctional facility is not gonna change. The vested benefits, we're not gonna know that till the end of the year. So usually we change those at the end of the year.
Right.
Because we don't know what the full year is what this current year is in, with the exception of a few things that we do know. So those ones that we do know, we will be changing those going forward. Some of those bigger ones are ones that we can adjust at that time, that don't take until we get to the year end to know.
Sure.
Yep.
really, you get down to the bottom line, unassigned is only 6.2.
Yeah, and I thought, okay, I'm gonna need to assign some of this for asbestos, but because of the subsequent year, expenditures and that assignment, there's really, I mean, we're down that 6 million is about 25-ish%. We're 20%, I think is industry standard where you wanna be. I mean, we could token, I honestly think maybe we should, and I'm sorry, this is coming late and maybe the auditors, I know that we are still drafting right now, but maybe we should assign $500,000 to pay an asbestos, bond payment, right? A bond payment for asbestos
Mm.
abatement and rebuilding. Maybe that's
Get out in
something
front of that.
we should assign. Now, it wouldn't be in fiscal 24 that we would make that, right? If you,
Correct,
you
so
know,
that's
it was
why-
putting the
Still
cart
be-
before the horse, and
It's
what if,
far out in
what
front.
if it is not 500,000? What if
Right.
it's less, what if it's more that's on this document for the entire, I mean, it's up to you, that would be a mere estimate, yep.
I
At least
just,
it's put aside. It's kind of
Mhm.
set aside and
Yeah.
accounted for.
it's known that it's
Yeah.
upcoming.
It's upcoming.
I don't
right?
want to tie any hands of treasurer's department
No, 'cause then that's-
managing cash.
That's a cash flow, could be a cash flow issue created
Right,
there.
but I don't know, I think, I mean, I'd love to hear from them about it. They do a great job of managing cash, especially given these assignments, but I don't think they go, and correct me if I'm wrong, okay, 5.217 million for subsequent year expenses, we're gonna put that cash over here and not use it. We don't have the ability to do that.
We don't have the cash
We
to,
don't,
We don't have the,
we don't want to spend it. I mean, if it's in the fund balance, and that was my point with, the 5 million last year for the antenna. Okay, you plan on spending that, but you plan on having revenues for it too. And that's why you have to include that into your budget, because you're gonna expend that. Okay, that's my problem right now with the ARPA that we talked about the other day. We've already spent over $700,000 of monies that the board has not appropriated. Okay, so that should have been a budget amendment before you got, same thing we talked about.
before any of it was spent.
Prior years. The
Mm.
Uniform Budget Act says you must have it appropriated by the board, and allocated before you can spend those dollars.
Mhm.
Well, we spent over $700,000 right now on the abatement
abatement, yeah.
for the building over there. And technically.
You shouldn't have, huh?
You have no budget for it. No, we shouldn't have. done it.
Then the board, obviously the board approved the contract, you
Yeah.
approved the amount, and that's a separate thing from that budget, and Treasurer Pickens is absolutely
Once the
right, and
contract
that's
gets
why that was
approved,
included in your budget
It should
amendment.
be,
That's when an
That's the
amendment should
next step.
come
Yep.
with the
That's
contract.
what the procedure should be.
Yeah.
Yes.
because now you're coming back and you're looking at this thing and you look at this, you say, well, when all of a sudden there's $700,000 coming.
Yeah.
Whoa, well, we've got to take that out of fund balance now. Well, you're thinking you have, like we did in the past, we had $3 million in the fund balance, but you didn't have it because you spent it on architectural and engineering costs
Mm.
that was never appropriated. That's why you've got to keep that up to date as you go, or otherwise your financial statements are worthless.
You don't have a picture of what's going on.
Right, you can't
Yeah, the
know. You
financial
can't know what's
snapshot is
coming.
not accurate.
Exactly right.
It's
So,
cloudy.
you want to make sure when you go to assign fund balances on those, that everything's been recorded on what should be, and you don't want to. With the cash flow problem at $2 million, we're having trouble at $2 million when it was a $17 million budget. Okay,
And how
now that
much-
we
Replace
are
that.
up in the 20s and 30s close, $2 million is probably not going to cover your fund balance, and that's just I guess on my part, but, so when you go assigning and committing ARPA dollars and those kind of things, granted, they have to be committed for certain things, but if you don't have the cash sitting out there in the fund balance, there's no way you can make those payments.
Mhm. It's kind of like the legislature, remember they demand that fiscal note, right? Or some of them do. You guys should be doing the same thing when we have those big contracts. If you go, wait, this wasn't at the budget presentation, wait, this isn't in the budget document. You're right. We should have a budget amendment that follows and comes forward to those with those contracts. That would be best
Well,
practice.
see, our budget for this year, I think, went to 32, right?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Because-
Current.
So-
34
so the budget- this
soon.
audit's about.
The prior, yeah,
22.
yes.
Yes.
So we're, it seems, we're already 6 months into the new fiscal year by the time this is done, so
Right.
it's,
Yeah.
So can I ask you a question about the cash flow minimum requirement? I mean, $2 2 million on 17 is 12% roughly. So what do you,
No
what,
profits,
right,
no profits in government.
no, but 12%, that's
You're working.
your cash flow, you got 12% of the budget. So are you saying that that would hold true for a $38 million or $32 million budget, that you would need 12% of that?
Well, it can work proportion too. If your revenues are up and your budget's up.
Then it would.
It should stay
But
at the 12%.
That's kind of where I'm going.
But not if you're using 5.2 million of fund balance.
Correct. So,
Yeah.
so if.
So it's like
It's a
almost
bigger
3
percentage.
pieces to it.
Right.
Revenues, expenditures.
Right.
Mhm.
All right.
What was that? Can you say that one more time?
Exactly right.
That's
This
right.
is being
That's what-
recorded.
Can we
So that-
This is being recorded.
That's kind of where I'm going with this, is that, is,
I remember everything I did.
The principle was correct. I'm not sure the practice.
right, okay. So moving
We'll edit
forward,
that part out.
so moving forward, ideally, without all these other projects, big projects or large dollar amounts that are assigned for specific things, hypothetically, if our budget went to $22 million that didn't have all this other added in stuff, would it still be true that you need 12% cash flow or something in that
I would
ballpark?
say.
Theory, that sounds good.
Yeah.
Depends on what you're spending early
Mhm.
dollars, because we collect taxes at
Mhm,
the end of our
correct.
thing. So if you're spending a bunch of monies
Up
up
front,
front,
you're gonna need more than
you
12.
don't have the cash flow.
Oh,
So it ebbs and flows based on when expenditures come in
So
versus when
exactly right.
When's your
revenues
drain
come
and
in for
large
taxes.
payment? When's your property and liability insurance payment? Those are big.
So hypothetically, and I'm gonna ask you this because I know you take good care of him, Kathleen, is,
She does.
I'm gonna say, so could you show me a chart that indicates percentage of budget, total dollar amount budget? What percentage you need month by month? In general, over time, there should be some pretty, something pretty close.
Of course, that is above your pay grade.
So that as a general rule, we could, if you showed us
or even quarter by quarter, month by, but like, I'm wondering if like the cash that you do, I'm thinking of if you reached out or if you, when looking at those amounts over that quarter, when that bottom line of cash gets low, it's like, those are almost the quarters that, oh, we're cutting it close. It's not necessarily maybe in September, October, because,
It's now.
It's now.
it's now.
That's right, it's
So-
right before you start collecting.
So we are
But-
always operating we're operating on the prior years with,
Fund balance.
with 55% of our revenues being
Using-
16 million being taxed, 15 million. The monies we get in September, October, at the
Mhm.
end of the fiscal year that's, closing out, we're using that, right? To
That's for
operate
current
for
year.
the current year.
Right.
So we're not, it's a little backwards. It's,
That's,
yeah.
it's a little backwards. I'd
So
like to know
we
just
seem
me.
better at the beginning of the year. Come April-ish, it's moved up more and more, yep.
Right,
Um,
it's just getting closer and closer to
now
the
it's
first of the
March.
year.
Settling,
It used,
hey,
Right,
you
yes,
settle a portion,
right.
and you're gonna be 100% funded.
yep.
Hopefully by the end of this month, we don't run out of ETR money. But yeah,
See, that's where I'm at. I need to understand cash flow better in terms of how this works, so that as the date continues to move closer and closer to the first, in terms of, the amount of money you have to operate cash flow wise, it's the amount of time you have is less and less, because we don't have the cash flow you
Yeah.
need to get us through
That's right.
this time where we have a lot of expenditures and we have no money coming in.
Yep.
see that, and that was the thing that happened when we switched from a fiscal account, and regular account.
Oh,
to a
yes.
fiscal account. Okay, we had a short period there. We used to always do our budgets in December based on what our levy was for that year. And that was our next year's expenditure.
So
Okay,
you offset it.
because we know the revenue that was coming
Mhm.
in December. Okay,
Okay.
now
Mhm.
we
Now you don't.
spent for a 9-month period there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
And now we hope that we were really close with the monies that come in in September.
hope is a good word.
Yeah, because again, you don't know exactly.
Or we hope that we
Not based
budgeted
on-
well enough.
I want
Yep.
to pay all my last year's expenses in July
Right.
this way, instead of going December this
Yes.
way.
Correct.
Yes,
So, I mean, that's the conundrum that
It
we're
is.
in,
Yeah,
that we jumped at, we did too much heavy spending
yes.
years ago, and we haven't ever caught up. Now your cash flow for corporate purpose of it is behind.
Yeah.
Because you don't have all the dollars you collected in December.
right. Did you need to get you through the hump?
Get you through the hump,
Yeah,
you know,
that's
so.
that's my concern.
Cash flow in the past, which wasn't a real relevant, issue. If we ran short, we always ran short in November, you know, or part of December kind of thing.
Right.
When we were a December year,
Right,
end,
when you
you're
were
saying.
your calendar year,
But even in the
upper-
last few years, it used to be closer to July,
Yeah, it was.
and now we're up to
Oh,
April.
Yeah,
now
it was
it's-
May.
because we're paying
Now we're March and April.
We were paying everything forward before, now we're
Mhm.
paying things in
Right.
arrears.
Because we have no reserves anymore.
Exactly right.
exactly right.
What-
That's-
what's
Tax
that?
money, we have the tax money coming in July, and we have pretty much all of it, but 100,000 maybe for settlement time. There's not a lot more tax money that's gonna come in for settlement for general fund,
Right.
because
See, that's
it's a
what-
summer levy and we've got pretty much
Okay,
what we're gonna have. So
There you go.
there's very little. So there's not a lot of waiting time there, but we get to this point and whatever we collected from July, August, September, we're down to the very little bit
Right.
come this time of year.
And it
We've
depends-
got to depend on the revenues coming in, other sources of revenues, but then we pay the drain at large of 428,000.
in March, yep,
Which I just did.
yep.
Yeah.
So you
And
have
that
those things that
hits.
come up.
Hit hard, yeah.
And it depends on other things that you've got going too, is, you know, because you can kind of fund other things through other, portions. Now, you have contracts like with the state for the antenna, you get reimbursed for it, you know, we're getting reimbursed.
That's 439,000 of us waiting on a reimbursement where it's
Exactly.
up cash flow.
So.
Right.
That'd be
Yeah.
cash.
It's awesome that we're getting reimbursed,
It
it
is.
truly is, but
Or it's
cash
hard-
flow wise.
Here's what we got, because we're paying.
You're out, and it's out of your control when you're gonna get it back.
So Commissioner,
That's-
to your point
Yeah.
of, can she give you a monthly
give
or
you-
even quarterly? We have that's a good point. We have one-time things of 439,000. The only thing maybe that's constant might be is the drain at large, yeah, payroll, those kind of things. But when you have things like this or something, it's not gonna look the same every month or every quarter even.
Right, but that's where you'd have notes. You've had a report like that with
Yeah.
notes at the bottom saying, well, we have this tower project waiting on a reimbursement,
Yeah.
explaining those
We have
things.
maintenance, we have.
Right.
Yeah,
The
the
things
12% of the
at least-
jet of
at least
the
to give us an
correctional facility,
idea of
yes.
where you're at, cash flow wise. I don't know. I'm having a hard time.
I'll give
trying
you
to-
an
trying to
idea.
run a
I'll give you
business.
an idea. Was it last year that we reached out to MMRMA to ask them to send us some of our
3 years ago, 3 years ago.
2 or 3 years ago, please send, this time of year, please send us some of our reserves. Because we are that low on cash.
It wasn't sent, it was, they give us the option, do you want, I thought, do you want these reserves to you, or do you want us to keep them for future?
That's our net asset distribution. We have that option every year.
Oh,
To take
okay.
a net asset distribution refund or say, leave it on our
Leave it in there,
account.
We'll use it
So
for
we
later.
always,
Okay.
we do not, we say, leave it there, leave it in our self-insured retention.
This was in addition to that?
Yes, this is in addition to
Okay.
that. We were scrambling. Where do we have cash and,
The MERS
you know,
forfeitures.
yeah, the MERS forfeiture. So when people leave us before they're vested, our 7% that we pay in
Right.
is held in forfeiture and MERS when those employees leave us without being vested.
We've
So,
had a
yeah, we
problem with this
regularly use that.
for years, because I know the
Man.
prior administrator was borrowing from funds that probably shouldn't have been borrowed from, like,
See, that's-
the enterprise fund.
See, That's where I'm
Building.
going. And it's, I
That's.
I need something, man.
Kind of know that you can afford what you can't afford, past practice, that's why I keep saying, you gotta understand what you've done in the past. in order to move
To
forward.
correct the
Right.
future.
When you're balancing your budget on, reserves of, you get back from MERS and your
Oh.
insurance company,
Oh,
I mean,
No.
you're busted at that point in
Yeah,
time.
you're scraping the bottom of the
You
barrel.
are. You've got
and it
no-
shows how important it is for the administrative controller's office to work with the treasurer's
Mhm.
office, right, and understand and know those cash flow concerns, right? And understand the actions we do.
Spending, not just the reserves, but.
It's a spending, and that's where.
Spending is the key. Now we're committed to major spending.
So this,
In a couple arenas.
so
Yeah,
One
And
we
as-
committed to, one we got committed to.
Yes, yes.
And just give you a heads up, this is kind of where we're gonna be going later this afternoon.
Good.
Yeah. Actually, I could just look at Kathleen, that's what I can do, it's okay?
What does
Where
it
we're
look
headed,
like?
okay?
What does it look like to change? Why did we change from the 12/31 to 9/30? And do
Because
you
the
think
state-
that'll be
State-
beneficial?
follow the state
State,
That's
regulatory,
the
they want
year.
us to do it because of
grants and
the
everything.
grants and all the stuff. We
So
don't say-
not beneficial to go back? Is that even an option, you know?
Probably an option, but I don't think it's beneficial because
Okay,
the accounting work that you're gonna have to do,
Mhm.
you gotta do a 3-month period, then you gotta do a 9-month period.
If it was a bear getting into it, it'd be a bear getting into it.
okay,
And right, and I-
okay.
And I think if we work the cash flow part of spending, if we get the spending controlled and leveled out so that it doesn't adversely affect the cash flow, then we're okay, but again, I haven't, I
You gotta
really
get your reserve build up.
build up so that we have that to pull from,
Cover
Yep.
yourself,
right,
Yeah.
along with, you know,
Yeah.
just fixing your spending, but.
right. But that's where, again, this will be part of our conversation later. But that's my thing, is how are we running this county for me? When I don't really understand what our cash flow is, we're making decisions without really knowing where we stand with cash flow and reserves.
Well, it's not like you started with a budget of 22 million and you have $22 million sitting over.
No,
here.
you don't,
So
that's
you
just
got
it.
to,
Right.
when do your revenues come in? When do those
Right.
certain expenses go out?
Right. Budget is not cash.
No, it is not, budget
Budget
is
is
not
not
cash,
No.
no.
Right.
And it's not fund balance.
Yes, yes.
Cash is cash.
All right, well, thank you both very, very much. I apologize for getting off on this.
Good
crazy
conversation,
tangent.
good learning.
Well, I'll blame you then.
I will say, at least there's improved communications throughout the county where we didn't have control of that information with previous administration.
Again, that gets us to our conversation in a little bit.
And
Man.
correct me if I'm wrong, when I first was elected 10 years ago to the Board of Commissioners, I think our fund balance unassigned at that time was probably close to 50% of our annual budget. So it has shrunk.
13 million on
Yeah.
a $17 million budget, I think, Jerry.
Yeah.
But I
What?
don't
Which
think,
in my book, the reserves were too high
right,
because they recommend 16 to 21%.
but there was no committing of funds for future, there was no assigning of
There's no
funds
need to.
at the time.
There was no, I mean, we were self-insured, we had a $2.3 million fund balance. We had 11 to 13 million dollars in our general fund balance. Everybody was working under their budget stuff, you know, under their budget things, and we were coming back positive most every year.
We solved that, didn't we?
We solved that very since you've been here.
So,
Oh.
again, in your,
I'm just getting back at it.
again, I like sharing the blame.
Do you need a hug?
Yeah, because that's
You
what.
know, you're the last guy.
So again, we get, for me, coming into this new, I hear you talking about the past and being financially flush, if you will, 15 years ago,
Yes, sir.
even as far as 10 years ago. So again, the question I'm getting is, how do you go from financially flush or the appearance of financially flush to the situation we're potentially going to be in?
We can show you.
So
I know.
if you
That's what
turn
I'm
to the
saying.
back,
Multi-factor.
you can turn to the
Back
back
budget.
stat section of your audit and there's 10-year. Really
Mhm.
What
wonderful.
page?
Let's see, I am flipping to 184 at 185 for change in net position. In the very back of the audit, you're gonna see these statistics that go back 10 years on
Mhm.
net position, your, you can see what
There it goes.
your revenues were, expenditures. You can see. Let's see, so 186, 187 shows the total changes.
Yeah.
And you can see a lot of negative movement until the recent year when we added so much
Yeah,
ARPA
it's
into
just-
our.
Artificially inflated by
Yes,
projects.
you see our fund balances
Mhm.
over the last 10 years.
We come to also, we'll want to look at later, when that changes. the budget. So,
Yeah.
That's a great indicator on where you're at,
Mhm.
what's going on.
Yeah, that's what I'm looking at right now, isn't that change?
Fund balance one, I think we're negatives for 6 out of 7 years there. 15, 7
Right.
years.
Yeah,
We had
well,
1 year of 556, the next year I think we're a little bit better too, but yeah.
Got 10 years of property tax collection data in there.
It's only
Like
increased
that.
$6 million since 2014.
But
And our spending has increased from 21 million
Yeah.
to the other, so we beat up $6 million in tax revenue. We beat up legal tax, we beat up health self-insurance.
Yep.
I mean, you look at it, the monies that we've spent, and that's the reason why we do that. And so,
that thing. Man. A lot of negative numbers.
Yeah, if you go to, so a lot of good information in the back of your audit. If you go to the front, it's page 23, it's in the management discussion and analysis. And Melissa and I were talking, and we said, okay, this bar graph pretty much tells the story.
Ooh-wee, look at that.
And if yours is in color, you'll see revenues are in blue and expenditures are in red. That graph tells the story.
one thing that's blue, ahead of red,
No,
no.
well, Public Works is dead even. That's probably Lake Isabella Water Supply and it has to pay for itself, right, kind of thing. So
It's a wash.
every other category is a sea of red. Expenditures
Should be the
are
front, Kathleen.
doubling. Page 23.
Oh, no, you don't have the, well.
Yeah, thanks, Mom. Don't worry about me.
No, well, that was the other one that was the draft.
Oh, you have the original, so that, it's a pretty telling, pretty simple graph, but it tells the picture right there.
What, can you tell those pages again for
23.
pages 23?
23 for that graph, let's see if I could find it on the original.
I got it.
You got it?
Thank you.
So I think should we go to this or to the single audit?
We can go to that one first.
Okay, so the one that is the communication to
Communicate.
those charged with governance. This is where, and this is the long letter where they tell you matters that they might have discovered during the audit, and that you're gonna flip ahead, I don't know, 6 pages maybe to page number A1, so it's attachment A. This is their comments and recommendations. So these talk about other matters, nothing that rose to a material weakness, right? Nothing like that, but they're things they call other matters
Recommendations of what they found.
for improvements or. Yep,
I
that's
see
right.
the 7th District Court is cited again for not working with the treasurer and. For
And
the
we
fund.
did talk with the, when we had our meeting, maybe I'll let Treasurer Pickens, we can come back to that one so we can explain when we met with the auditors and their thoughts on that, or what they're suggested, or what they see across, multiple, all other counties.
Mhm. I don't think it's that people aren't working together. I don't think that's the crux of it.
It's just, does the court have the right to supersede the legislature and
Mhm.
legislative acts when they conflict?
Yes,
The court auditors and the court, yes, based on,
you got it. You trump us. For lack of a better word. Bank reconciliations was another repeat comment, and this had to do with not having a formal policy in regards to how they're prepared and the timeliness of it. As you know, treasurer's office is doing them very timely. It's administration that is not doing them timely, we're doing them in BSNA. So in that regard, I guess those are considered the official ones and why they're saying untimely, but with the staff shortages and administration, we are not able to get those done or reviewed in a
But
timely.
this one here is actually, as treasurer and Kathleen and I were talking, this notes nothing on timeliness. Because at our audit meeting, remember we talked about how they were going to, they said the treasurer's
Treasurer's
bank
doing
recs
them timely.
and timely, and they were gonna start using those ones. I don't know if that meant at the starting now, starting in the new fiscal year, what that looks like. But we have questions to them on some of these before the final draft of, so this may be, we have questions to them, so I don't know if this one will stand or keep, because
Okay.
we had meetings and thought we understood it and came out of that meeting with
Different
how-
understanding.
different understanding.
They even said that we took it off last year's audit, so it can't be a repeat of anything. you know?
Right.
And they said we use the treasurer's,
Yeah.
things, you know.
Right. The only thing that I would think that might stay is the idea of having a formal policy, which again, I think we talked at. And that's fine. If they're recommending a policy, let's keep that piece on there of the policy, but the other pieces. What was that?
Copy of the MCL.
Mhm.
So, just, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you
No,
off. I
no.
just wanted to, we
No,
just talked about
please.
that before the meeting. So, same with the next one.
I was just
The-
gonna say, did you happen to talk to them about this one? Because I know that, we handle some of the outstanding checks we try to handle it for payroll account and the HRA account, but I know you handle them for everything
I
else.
don't understand the comment either, because we SG'd after 1 year. Any of them that are maybe court deposits that can't be, or if they're probate estate, they can't be within the year. You have to wait for support things to happen. So I guess I would like clarification. on that.
Absolutely. That's what
We do
I
the
want some
1 year
follow-up.
SG,
So
so,
it's your position that you're handling them correct.
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah. They have, did it used to be 3 years and then they changed it to
And then it
one?
Went to one
Yep,
for governments.
Yep.
Or 1 year, unless you have a probate estate or something like that, they are holding on deposit to wait for a court order. So,
yes. So,
the stale checks part, I would like clarification on, because we do, after 1 year, they are SG did and remove them.
Okay. I'm good with that.
The next three are repeats, that, the first one's that we don't have a formal information security policy or a vendor policy. I know that, actually, I think Michelle is working on IT security policies with
Okay.
that because of the Title 4D audit. So that's part of it, but certainly policies we need to draft and get on get adopted by the board going forward. Internal controls of cash receipts. This was another repeat, whatever they pulled, said that the receipt to the bank or the deposit to the bank, it didn't say who
Gotta sign
took
it.
it. to
Sign
the-
it.
And it does.
that's another
And-
question.
Because, yeah, we had.
Your initial.
That, no,
Didn't recognize-
Is that not
last
good
year,
enough?
last year, this was a initial, it's not finding, a recommendation or
Mhm.
do this.
A comment,
So we
yeah.
had the conversation with the treasurer's office and said, going forward on those deposits, if we can have that done, go, the initials, no problem, completely fine. So when we provided those with the initials, I'm a little confused as to, we'll be doing some follow-up on those to.
Question is, yeah, aren't initials good enough? Right?
Well, maybe
I
they need to
think
connect
so.
with Karen's OCR,
Well, it says
software.
signature or initials, so
Right.
doing initials.
You're doing what they're
If
saying.
you KMS, you're gonna know it's me, or SP, it's him.
Yeah,
And the tough part of it is we segregated the duties from the individual to somebody different each day kind of thing.
Wow.
To who does this, who does the bank recs.
It's just not all the same
We've
person. right?
done all that, and then they come back last year. Got an initial, the person that takes it to the bank.
But you already have an SOP that created that, that does just that.
I mean, we've
And you've been doing it.
And it's been years.
The
Yeah.
check-
Since last year
double
when they
check.
said, yeah. we must-
And plus, we've been doing it to jump through the hoop.
They just need to, maybe they're not recognizing the
Yeah,
initials or
They need to
something.
be reminded of what you're doing.
The last thing here was, had to do with the recycling fund, and there was a balance that was deemed uncollectible at the end of the year, but we didn't write it off. And so there was an entry that had to be done in order to make it uncollectible officially on our books.
And there is one more for Casby 96 in there.
So if you turn the page,
Gas.
inventory of GASB, so SBITA, subscription-based IT arrangements. Remember, this was a new GASB for this audit,
Yes, this was new for this audit.
very first one.
First
so-
time of us doing it and collecting a lot more than what I was thinking. Subscription-based arrangements and what qualifies for one, what does not. So I reached out to departments. They got, they did the best they can of what they thought was one.
Send me your
Or what
SBITA.
they
I'm
send
sure,
me your
yeah,
items. And in the end, there was, I think, maybe one that they found that they said, well, this really should be looking through the documents, this should be one. And we added it, but there's a lot of them and we've got a lot of departments and a lot of, so I think I have a bit of a better understanding going forward and I'll try the departments for everything, their firstborn, everything, social security numbers. To get it and leave it up to kind of the auditors to just to let us know does this qualify for one?
Awesome, thank you. I know these GASBs come left and right and it, they keep changing things. The next page shows you 3 more GASBs coming forward. So you know that it's extra work, right? It's extra work to prepare the information like Melissa just described, extra work for the auditors to audit the information. So what do you think will happen to the price of our audits going forward? It's probably not going down, but you'll see some more GASB changes coming forward.
I think we're coming to it. We've got a year left of that contract. Or 2?
Either that was or our current year is the.
No, we renewed it back when,
I think either,
when Mark
we might
got
have,
surgery.
yeah, 21.
21, we.
Yep, for
I
a
believe.
5-year.
Yep.
That would have been 20, 21, 22, 23, 24. I think we're in the last year. Our current fiscal 24, I think, is the last year that we're under contract. We'll definitely go out for. bid.
Yeah, RFP.
Okay, so then the only thing we have left now is the single audit document, so that, take this. It's the smaller one of those, you got it. Also, remember the single audit is federal expenditures. And remember, we had 2 major programs this year that we spent more than $750,000 in. One was the USDA Rural Development Funds on the Sheriff's Office and Correctional Facility. And the other certainly is the federal ARPA dollars that we recognize. So those are the 2 major programs. If you turn to page 13 of the single audit, you will find their one finding. It's kind of a conglomeration, what do they call it? Conglomeration finding. It's a whole bunch of things. Any one of these by themselves would not have caused a quote unquote finding, but because all of these were together, they did. So we can march through them and hopefully, Melissa, you can help me if I falter. Okay, so they identified during the audit significant adjustments which were needed in order to reach proper year-end balances. So things that needed to be booked that weren't on the books. And again, page 13, first bullet point, accounts payable related health insurance expenses were understated by $50,000 in the internal service fund. Remember, we spend about $4 million a year on health insurance expenses that run through that fund. A portion of the prior year accrual was not reversed and did not accrue for all prescription invoices. Is that one that they gave us? They gave us an entry last year and we were supposed to reverse it as of 10/1 and it just didn't happen.
It's kind of a two-piece, the entry from last year that we booked, a part of the entry was not reversed. And then for this current year, there was, the invoices like from 44 North, that was missed, I think maybe August or September's was missed, getting pushed back, getting accrued,
okay.
at the cost of, wherever those are, $35,000 to $40,000. Yep.
The next one is in the drainage district, component unit. The assets were understated by approximately $22,000. I think an entry was made twice and kind of compounded, that amount. Capital assets were understated by $40,000 in the recycling fund. This has to do with depreciation and how that was booked.
There was for recycling, and again, none of these are new excuses, but just kind of some backstory on some of these. Besides losing the gal that knew these assets in and out, Chris was a whip on these. The recycling did have a lot of, do you remember the couple pieces of equipment that they were almost brand spanking new and some issues happened with them we had to take them off the books, get new ones, but there was trade-in values and some sale of them. So, in preparation of those, some pieces were overlooked and missed, but the auditors gave us those, with all of these, they've given us entries to correct, and these are correct going forward. And the reason it says, repeat at the top, repeat finding, there used to be maybe one finding you would have, and it's for one big thing, or one, if you remember the Motorola lightning strike few years back, for that fund, booking the expenditures that had gone through MMRMA, but we didn't book them on our end, to the tune of 800 or so thousand for that fund. That was significant or material, however they worded it. That was a finding, I think, just of itself. They've now, for the last few years, they're grouping all of these smaller ones together. So if you look at like the 22,000 of the drainage district, I couldn't tell you how much millions of dollars of drains and drainage district throughout the whole 22,000 would not be material
This is point,
to that.
0.0
Right.
something% of the
But
total.
combining these, again, as of the last few years, and I even asked Annette, they said that's just, not all of these are necessarily material, but we're listing these all as one finding. So at the top, an audit adjustment from last year, they had different ones than this, but
That's why
still
they say
an
repeat.
audit adjustment for this current year as a repeat. So just kind of some back information.
So
Capital assets, vehicles, understated by 26,000. We recorded the vehicles, but not the upfitting, right? When all the decaling and the in-car computers and all that happens. So we just needed to
uplifting costs. Yep.
add that. The last bullet point on page 13 talks about the PA 123 fund. That's the foreclosure, right? Foreclosure sales.
Mhm.
And says that it was understated by $17,628 due to the county recording excess proceeds from the tax sale by reducing liabilities instead of reducing revenue in the prior year. Nothing nefarious going on here, folks. I mean, this is just,
Oopsie-boo-boo.
yeah, and if we find these things during the audit, we have an opportunity to correct them. If the auditors find them during the audit and say, you need to make this, this journal entry, this adjustment, then
You're right.
then it goes on the
Most likely
list.
going
right?
on.
Page 14 shows the last one. This has to do with our pension liability and how it's stated for a lot of different funds that have associated pension liability on our DB. The GASB 68 entry was done incorrectly.
And that one has to do, it's a big 16, 17 tab calculation that we grab our actuarials and our statements of net position and a bunch of everything we've paid throughout the year and allocate to these, 4 funds. So, it's a monster of a document. It's a monster of a task, and, certain functions of it were, backwards, if you will, or there's one way to do it, there's another way, and it was my way was the wrong way. So, again, they provided us entries, we have it corrected, but because they found it and because it is, it's 86,000, that's significant. It is over 4 funds, but again, if you looked at a piece of that which belonged to maybe DTR and a piece that went to recycling, maybe not entirely, significant, but as a whole, it's on it, so. Yes.
So the 173. 173,000. That's in a related.
Yes,
defined
yep, so
benefit.
that is throughout those 4 as well, or yes, throughout those 4 funds.
So that's the total of this particular item, or is it the 86 plus the 173?
I think it's both, right? Because
One is has to do with the balance sheet, so the $86,000 is a balance sheet item that was, it's all the same calculation, but it affects our balance sheet and our revenues expenditure. So the 86 is a balance sheet item, the 173 is a expense item.
Yeah, because in aggregate, you're looking at understatements of over 200,000 without the 173. Okay. I guess that gets into the next question. Remedies. What's the best course moving forward for remedies?
Well, I can say, with this bullet point we're looking at right now, this is one of those calculations, correct me if I'm wrong, please, that Meaner usually performs for us. Meaner Pisterson does the pension calculation for us. So obviously we'll have discussions with them, or already have, about the error and how to correct it on the other side, but that was
It's an oversight.
there's an oversight.
That's a pretty large number for an oversight. Okay.
I think, as far as the vehicles, SOP will be put in place. Obviously, now we know that upfitting costs have to be included when that is booked. I'm sure that in the foreclosure sale fund, whatever was, should have been reduced revenue for the excess tax sales instead of reducing the liability, that's now known that won't happen again going forward. Obviously, the error and drains of doing something twice, that's maybe a check, I don't know what kind of checks.
I think
and
part of it goes
balances
back
can-
to, we need to figure out some way to implement a second set of eyes, a review.
I was gonna say, that's kind of where I'm going with
One
this.
person can't do the
No,
entire thing.
And it's not possible.
2 people couldn't do the entire
Correct,
thing.
but 2
without-
people doing it, it gives you a better opportunity to minimize these, if you will.
Absolutely.
You're
And
still
2
gonna have
people on
one.
staff doing it is a world better than contracting out, right? For generally speaking,
they know
for
our
the same
business.
amount of money, we would have them 5 days a week versus 1 maybe, right? So I do think that is probably an answer to a lot, is when we were fully staffed, we didn't have necessarily all these all these issues, right?
Let's check one another.
I would like to draw attention to the next page, 15. This is the findings they found regarding our federal awards and spending, so that's a really big blank page, and I'm happy to see that. And then the last page goes over the audit adjustments that we talked about in the big document. Just a collective statement about those. Are there any questions? Mr. Dieter, I believe Doug Dieter will be here from Raymond next Tuesday to present the audit to the board. And I
Okay.
believe that Steve Krinovic might be joining us from there as well.
So
I'm not sure. How to check that.
maybe at that time, we might have some answers from Maine or Custarian regarding some of these.
Well, I mean, it
Oversights.
was an oversight.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, but
They are obviously correcting it at their expense, or have.
As they should, right? Yeah.
Mhm, mhm. Any questions?
So this is a discussion. Do we move this, the whole audit for adoption consideration at the next?
Actually, it'll be on the agenda as a presentation
Okay,
from Raymond, so I don't know that you even
Presentation.
need to.
take action at this
right,
point.
Correct,
Okay.
Okay.
correct.
On
Deputy interim.
Is he gonna do his presentation before they have to send it to the state?
before what?
Yes, yes, he'll do his presentation next Tuesday at 5 at the work session. And I think it doesn't have to be to the state till the end of the month, or March 30th.
Yeah.
60 days, wait, 6 months after
Yes. so
this
March
going,
31st.
so I think,
Well, I just wanna know in case makes those corrections.
yes, I feel like any correction, they're still taking, right?
Yes, that's why I want to have a conversation today and get that on the books and set up a call, maybe start with an email of 1, 2, 3, and then, hey, let's set up a call, let's talk about this.
Talk through these so we're all on the same page.
Yep.
That's for all
So
this.
I think we can change those even before the document for next, we can have those conversations.
We have the
before.
final audit.
Yep.
Yeah, I think I should have, them. And then get these figured out first.
Absolutely. Yep.
Now it doesn't drag out.
Do you think, no, just go back to that conversation we had about working capital? Maybe there's value in upping that amount in the assigned. I mean, we've left it at 2 million and it's
I
been
think
2
it-
million. I think if there's an opportunity really to work with the auditors on, making some changes, that is one I feel like we probably should
Circled
incorporate.
I do,
3.8.
I do, however, remember, this is fiscal year 23's audit.
Right.
With how fiscal year 24 and we are currently spending, even on those unknowns now, we just did a budget amendment for $2 million.
Mhm.
The whole purpose of that unassigned fund balance is to stay within those cash wise. If we are gonna up it, we've almost already spent it because of the new project in the current fiscal year. So at this time, we can put it on paper, but in my opinion, I don't know if that's even what we want to say. We've assigned it 6 months ago, but just kidding, we've already used it. I don't know if
It's
that's,
maybe better to have a or an honest conversation about going forward.
yeah.
Then, is
Yeah.
probably.
And I'm not, I mean, our fund balance isn't, um, extremely, or unassigned is not, I am afraid to dip into it too much and then up that amount when, not that it doesn't mean anything, but that's almost null and void now 6 months later. Because we're gonna up it, but then we've just now had to use 2 more.
Part of the problem looking forward, we used to have a contingency for each budget year. And we eliminated that now.
Yeah.
And you're using your fund balance
As
your
your
As
contingency.
And my way of thinking is that's not the proper way to do that. It's not what the budget act says, you should do. It says you should have a contingency. And you should set that amount and make the people go by that amount. I mean, Major stuff, yeah, you don't know about the contamination and that kind of stuff.
That's some of
Those are rare
the unknowns.
occasions.
Those are
One-off.
easily justified when
Right.
brought forward.
Absolutely. Here's our fund balance. That everything we do now, we tap the fund balance. That's kind of something that you want to project on what your fund balance is going to be for the next year as well, to get you started, because
You need that.
we work in the arrears, situation, it covers the cash flow, but
So what do we do in a situation, Treasurer, of, I think in the years since I've been here, we've budgeted 50,000 for contingency. We took that away, because it wasn't being used, and maybe it just wasn't being used the way that it should have. But then you have a project like the asbestos, and clearly the little 50,000 is not gonna,
Sit down with the board and you say, hey, look, we're estimating this at 1.2 million,
okay?
okay? You go in and you say, what's our fund balance?
Pull it
Because you've got
out,
no other revenues.
right?
So that's
Right.
where we gotta pull it from, or we're gonna go borrow right away, to take care of it.
Mhm.
And you set that, and you put it in your budget. You make a budget amendment for that.
Right,
But you do it before you spend your money.
right, but I guess my question is on the contingency about using that, is that just more for like, I mean, yeah, we could set,
One-offs.
we could set a higher contingency, but I'm just saying in that,
You look at, you're gonna buy another vehicle for something, one got wrecked,
okay, okay,
Right.
those
It's a
smaller
one-off-
things.
One-off that,
but you gotta put, you wanna put limits on it, because you just
you
don't
can't just
wanna.
have willy-nilly.
Willy-nilly.
$100,000,
Is that what it was?
and then they dropped it back to
To
50,
50,
but they never used it properly, because they always did, well.
Just
we
when
didn't need
it's-
it. We didn't need it for a long time, but.
You had
Well,
put
you
big
get
fund
to the
balance,
fund
yeah.
balance for the last
Yep.
7, 8 years or so,
Correct.
to make all our changes.
okay,
And I would think that you might want to get away from that, to say, hey, look, we've got a contingency here, or maybe set your contingency to a point to where your budget is
Right.
8%,
A
3%.
percentage of your,
Say that
Right.
what the contingency is, that, because that's all we can.
that's what I'm used to, is a percentage of your budget.
Sure.
Is your contingency, because that gives you, it'll ebb and flow with your budgets, depending on.
But we've never done these adjustments during the year either, kind of thing. We've always said, hey, here's what our original budget is. And then at the end of the year, we have to cover costs and stuff, we do, but now we seem like we're comparing our budgets, what it was the very last one we did. So we really don't know that, I think if you look at here, there's
The 10-year.
22s, you've got $2 million worth of stuff we got back. Okay, our budget said this, at 20 million or 22 million or whatever, 24 million,
Mhm.
and we ended up at 20 million. I mean, that's $2 million. That's a lot of money.
that's our working capital.
Well.
I mean, think
Yeah,
think
right.
about that amount of,
Right.
I
we're
don't-
saying, that-
Yeah, budgeters. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I mean, that's what it says to me.
not necessarily, I mean, I know in the last couple of years.
2 million,
2 million, it's almost 10%.
If you look at the
Eight-
MD&A
8.5%.
between some of our bigger, more expensive departments, trial court, sheriff's office, PA, Barbary, not turnover, but yeah, unable to retain staff or staff turnover or what, that's Carrie at the courts, those positions, what we budgeted are to the tune of, I think, about 800,000. That's, yeah, yep, and maybe that is it not, so this year, last year I thought it was around 800,000 of
Uh-huh.
they're not being able to
fill the
employ
position,
1, 2,
so-
3, plus $22,000 of health insurance if it's a family plan per person.
Mhm.
So that will add up. If you have 3 people, 4 people or turnover, it
Makes sense.
it does add up. Not 2 million, but a good piece of it of 800, 900,000 can attribute to
Yeah.
that.
You have to have them in the budget to begin with, because you may fill.
Right, and so we thought about that. Do we just reduce the budget next year and say, well, Carrie, you didn't spend it last year? Well, we can't, of course, but PA, you didn't use it last year. We're gonna veer on the side of caution and
Cut it
maybe put one less position as budget because you weren't able to spend it. We can't just take that piece of budget out, because then it's looking like we're telling the department because then what if they do get a great candidate and they have someone and they do work 10 months out of the year, getting hired, and it doesn't go vacant for a whole year. So that kind of, yeah. But we can adjust those throughout the year.
Mm.
I don't wanna not budget for them, but maybe 6 months in, if there's nobody in, maybe we take half of those 3 people that were vacant and cut that budget halfway through the year. We could do that. I'm up for that, but I don't wanna start with you used 400 less last year, so we're gonna take it out at the beginning.
So as a recommended contingency dollar amount, you're saying 200 grand?
I see you guys on a budget, I mean.
You know, what would be a recommendation though?
My recommendation, let's see where we're gonna go forward here.
Yeah, but in a perfect world, what would you say would be ideal?
Maybe a percentage?
A percentage, so if you say a percentage, what would that percentage be?
Well, right now. I give them
10%, 10%.
10%. That's pretty high, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah.
But,
Contingency mission budget on, $1 million on a $24 million budget.
Yeah.
5%, that's a lot, I mean, that is a lot.
Mhm.
I don't know, it just seems that we're not very close to getting our
even if,
budgets as of
okay,
a few years.
even if it's a $24 million budget and you say 1%,
I think we have a lot of work to do before we
240,000.
get there.
Yeah,
Well, I mean,
is a ballpark figure.
yeah, we've had, the dominant number of additions
Mhm.
to the budgets and stuff. It's gonna depend on how we're gonna try to set in stone in our budget, which kind of budgets are supposed to be,
Kind of, as
And
much as you
anything that
can,
flares up after the fact, you have no control over it,
right?
which, so you don't mind dipping into, but, we say, hey, this is where we're gonna stay, and that's where we want to stay to. And let's do it. And if there's overruns because people don't hire or whatever, you're gonna have more underruns than overruns
Mhm.
on that.
So it balances out.
So
over
it's
time,
gonna,
yeah.
it's gonna, work for your cash flow, it's gonna work for your other as well.
So,
Let's think, the only other thing in county budgets, all good discussion,
Mhm.
but we're just started into meeting with, departments. We have a couple more today. We're working through it, so I'm not sure there's anything else I want to say at this point.
for me, other than,
Yeah.
I do want,
Something to eat.
and I do would like to say something to that effect. I know I had mentioned in a staff meeting about coming, if it were me, I would come prepared with a certain percentage reduction in my own particular department budget. Come with solutions, come with, options. I think, for anybody that's listening, we appreciate that greatly. Not absolutely necessary, but man, it really does, create an environment where we're working together to try to figure this out. So I'd just like to make that point.
Okay. Let's move on to item number 8, which is invoice list discussion. Starting with the one of March 1st. I don't see anything here that I have questions on or you should comment on. You had something on the interior, Bill?
As a total, I just kind of added together the items that were associated with the upcoming solar project. And
With the drain.
with the drain commission. So far, we're at $17,000. I did get my answers to how that came about. Again, obviously, the drain commissioner is working through legal, working through engineering to try to determine the best course of action for the county. I understand that. I do have questions, which I've addressed with the chair and with Madam Administrator. And at some point in time, I'm hoping that we can have a conversation about that down the road, but. I can
And those
also-
costs are being covered by the GTE or the company that's looking to setting funds aside to cover those costs?
Well, that's in the 801 fund, so I will have to ask the drain commissioner about that. I know in community development, there's an escrow set up for, special use permit and site plan review process.
Are they covered?
But in the drain fund, I'm not sure that a similar escrow is,
Should it be?
I don't know. I'm gonna
Yeah.
look into that. I
DTE
I
set the drain line.
did, Okay, they did. Thank you. Thank you, Kathleen. Similar to.
17,000 something.
Yeah, that's what I
Well,
got.
then that,
Just
okay,
over
We do have
17,000.
escrow then.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
perfect. Thank you. I was unaware. That makes sense.
Should be. Yeah.
Makes sense.
Anything else on the March 1st list of bills?
No.
Well, on the March 8th? Did we have another chunk of money going out for Clark Construction? The January construction costs and a chunk too going out for the asbestos abatement, so.
So understand that almost $2.5 million Clark construction bill, you do the math. 12%, you can see, every month you see one of those. Oh, wow, our 12% is over $300,000.
Mhm.
He,
Do you have any other questions? I didn't have any on the larger bills or,
I didn't have anything on the inside, none on this one, so I'm good. Nothing.
then we'll just move these forward to review at
Tuesday night?
the work session.
Mhm.
Any announcements?
I have none, sir.
We'll do a call to final public. And we'll adjourn the meeting of the Finance and Administration Committee.
Thank you, thank you.
We have to get over to the other building for our first meeting there, right?